All right, at this point, you know that your notes are always going to start with this. So just to review, first thing, you're always going to do GCF. Second thing, two terms, difference of squares and sum or difference of cubes. Three terms, trial and error. And four terms is grouping. And that's what we're going to focus on today, is grouping. This is the last type of factoring that we're going to do. And so hopefully by now you are an absolute expert on this. So what happens with grouping is we have four terms. So we're going to group these so that we're going to look at the first two terms, and then we're going to look at the last two terms. Now, the sign that we have here in the middle is going to go with the last two terms. So with this one, we would have a positive 9, but sometimes you might have one like down here on number 4, where when we group this, we're going to have a negative. So this one's a little more tricky because we have to look at this. So the goal when we're grouping is that we want to, let me make us a little note here. So the goal is that we have one common factor. That's what we want to do. So we're going to go over here and we're going to look at just the first two terms because we've grouped it, right? And so I want to pull out my GCF. So my GCF here is going to be a 2, because that's the biggest number I can pull out, and an A, right? And so what's left here is going to be 3B in the first term. So 2 times 3 is 6. I have 1A, I have 1B, so I'm done. I go to the second term, and I have a 2, I already have an A. So 2 times 2 is 4 with 1A. Okay, now I'm going to go over here and I'm going to look at this term. Well, this is going to be easy because these are both addition. So I'm going to add, because they're both addition, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to pull out a GCF. So if I look at these two terms, I can pull out a 3. So what's left here is going to be 3 times 3, which is 9, and a B. And I look at the last term and I have plus 2. Okay, now here's what happened. Remember I said up here our goal is we have to have a common factor. So here is our common factor. I have this 3b plus 2 and 3b plus 2. If you don't have a common factor like this, you probably did something wrong in Algebra 2. So we want to go back and refactor this and make sure that these two things are the same. Now, because they're the same, I'm going to pull this out as one of my factors. So this becomes 3b plus 2. So think of this as I'm pulling out another GCF. So I pull this out, and here's what I have. Now, my second factor is going to be what's left, which is 2a, positive 3, so plus 3. So let's review this one more time. So I have this 2b plus 2. These two combined, and this is where this came from, 2b plus 2. And then I take what's left, and I combine those, 2a plus 3, and that becomes the second part of my term. So that is this. Now, if I was to FOIL this all the way out, which I'm not going to check it right now, but you could on a piece of paper, you're going to end up with this. So let's look at another one here. So first two terms. That's all I care about right now. So I cannot pull a number out, but I can pull an x squared. So when I pull out an x squared in this first term, I'm left with 3x, and then second term, minus 4. Okay, so now I'm going to look at these terms. Now, because this is a negative, and this is a negative, I'm going to keep my negative inside here, and I'm going to say, all right, I'm going to keep the greatest common factor that I can pull out here is going to be a 2. So if I pull out a 2, I'm left with 3x minus 4. Now let me check this one. 2 times 3 is 6x. 2 times negative 4 is negative 8. So here's what I have. 3x minus 4, 3x minus 4. They're the same. Now, if I would have pulled out a negative 2 and my signs were different in here, I want to go back and reevaluate this part of it and make sure that it's going to work. So I pull out my common factor, and then I combine what's left. So x squared plus 2. So this is not a perfect square, so I'm done. Won't go any farther. And you have to check that, right? You have to see, okay, if I have two terms here, is this a perfect square and is it a difference, and can I keep going, right? Okay, so we look at this. And it looks like I could pull out a 2, but I know I can go a little bit higher and I can pull out a 4. So if I pull out a 4 and I see they both have an x, I can pull out an x. So what do I have left? 4 times 5 is 20. I have one x and I have one y. I go to the second term. I have a 3. And I've already pulled out my x. Okay, well this part over here is a little funky, right? Because it says plus 5y plus 3. Well, that's what I want, right? But when I'm grouping, I have to have this second term to make my second factor. So let's go back up here and look at this one. I have 3b plus 2 and 3b plus 2. So I pulled one of those out. I factored that out. And then I have this that's left. So what this means is I'm going to add a plus 1 right here, and I'm going to keep this 5y plus 3. So now I have that common factor, which is 5y plus 3. My other factor is going to be 4x plus 1. Now, if I hadn't done that, it would be 4x and there wouldn't be anything here, right? So it wouldn't be 4x plus 0, because remember, when I put this 1 in, I can distribute this 1 through, and I get plus 5 plus 3. So this one's tricky. You have to make sure that you add this plus 1. You just don't take that out right there. All right? So let's look at this last one. So my first two terms, I can pull out a 2x squared. Okay, now over here, I know I can pull out just a 3. So if I pull out a negative 3, then what I'm left with is 3x. Now, the reason I knew to pull out a negative 3 here is because I wanted this to be a positive 3x, because this is a positive 3x. Remember, I need these two terms to match. So if I would have only pulled out a 3, then I would have negative 3 on the inside, and they wouldn't have matched. So I pull out a negative 3. Now, because this is positive, and I pull out a negative, I have to have negative 5. So negative 3 times negative 5 is a positive 15. And these two factors match. So I would have 3x minus 5, and then 2x squared minus 3. Okay, I am going to go ahead and pause the video, and I want you to work through this last set, and then I'll come back on and do some explaining. Okay, let's start up here at the top. So this is grouping. Pretty straightforward. This is not grouping. This is only 3 terms. So you apply GCF and then trial by error. Okay. Number 7 is also not grouping. Number 7 is GCF and then difference of squares. Okay, number 8 is grouping, and this is super, super confusing with all of these A's and B's in here. So after I factored this out, I had to go back in. I don't have arrows on here, but I had to go back in and check all of this to make sure it was right. Let's talk about this one specifically. So this becomes negative 6ab cubed, which is right. Now this one, you have to make sure that this becomes a negative, because you have negative 2, which gives you a positive 4. And you have to do that so that these two terms will match. Now technically, there's one step farther. If you stopped at this, that's where we've been. But remember, when you have like terms, you've got to pull them out. So really, this could go one more step. And this would be 3b minus 2, so no change on this first one. But then here, I can factor out an a and a b. And then what's left on here would be a minus 2b. So I have this GCF that I could have factored out of all of this in the very beginning. And that technically is what I should have done. I should have factored this out in the very beginning. Okay, it's the same thing with this one. I have a 2 and a 6 and an 8 and a 24. These are all even. I could have factored out, and I could have also factored out an x in the beginning. So what we see here is that this can keep going. I can keep factoring. So I have x plus 3, which is this first term. And then here, I'm going to factor out a 2x. And when I do that, I get x squared minus 4. And then what do you notice? I have a difference of squares. So I'm going to pull this 2x out front because it's the greatest common factor. And then I have x plus 3. And then this becomes x plus 2. And this is x minus 2. So a lot of stuff that's happening in here. And I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, oh, am I going to have to do this on a test? Yes, you should be able to do this on a test. So you need to go all the way down. So what I would do is, because I think this is single-sided, I would rewrite this question on the back of your paper, and I would redo this by pulling out a GCF first, okay? And then what you're going to see is you're going to end up with this answer here at the very end. In fact, I'm going to pause the video, and I'm going to do that, and then pull back on and look at it after you've done the same thing. Okay, here we go. Let's go through this real quick. So here's what I have. I pulled out a 2x. So what's left when I pull out a 2x is this. Okay, so then I'm going to do grouping just like normal. I pull out an x squared. I'm looking at my first two terms. I pull out this x squared, and I have x plus 3. Over here, I pull out a 4. Now, I'm going to check this one because this gives me negative 4x, and then this is a positive 3, so negative times positive is negative 12. Now, that's good because I needed these two to match anyway. Okay, so this 2x, you can't forget him. So bring him down, and then I have x squared minus 4, and I have x plus 3, which is my second term. Here's my difference of squares. All I did was rewrite the order. So I have my 2x, x plus 3, and then I have my difference of squares, x plus 2, x minus 2. Okay, so this is actually even easier when you do your GCF first. So you see this is the same answer that we got on the front side. Okay?